What is your name?
I refuse to answer. No. My name is Johnny Carson.
How do you know that to be your name?
Well, it's on a birth certificate, legally recorded.
That's hearsay.
That's hearsay?
Well, of course.
Well, I mean, if it's legally recorded?
That's still hearsay. Suppose you were born, and I must assume that you were born because you're here tonight with us. There's a certificate made out not by you, certificate made out by somebody else. That a boy child was born to Mr. and Mrs. Carson, and that he was named Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that you know that to be the fact. That means you have read that to be the fact. Okay?
Yeah, I see what you mean. In other words, I only have to go by what is recorded.
You're pleading guilty to something that you don't know of your own knowledge.
In other words, I should have said, if somebody asked me who I am, I say I plead not guilty, right off. It doesn't go quite that far.
Not that
plead
far.
not guilty. I see what you mean. That is hearsay. I'm only accepting what somebody has said.
What somebody else has said.
But that would be legal. I mean, if you come in with a birth certificate, that proves you're more.
Well, birth certificates are legal until they're attacked and proved to be invalid. That has happened, too.
Die stecken auch mit denen unter einer Decke, ja. Die Richter sind bei uns praktisch alle Logenrichter, ja. Und die Freimaurer, Logenrichter. Und diese Freimaurer-Logen sind auch die Pharmakonzerne besitzen, die Banken besitzen und so weiter. In der Spitze halt die Logenmeister, ist ja nur immer einer, der was zu sagen hat in solch einer Loge. Ne? Und die Richter sind also auch Logenbrüder und kriegen von oben gesagt, was sie zu tun haben. Und der Prozess ist schon vorher entschieden, bevor er überhaupt noch angefangen hat.
Ja, also meine letzte...
In doing this, they registered and monetized the spirit and soul of a living being. This denotes ownership. And when your parents were tricked into filling this out, they allowed your spirit and your soul to be monetized. And futures were sold on you.
Spirit and soul.
Now, this is my birth certificate. This is actually a share. See this red number? This A, I'm born in Canada, this is a Class A share. Now, this is called a CUSP number. And all securities require a CUSP number. And that's what this is. And you are held as collateral to secure the debt which our government owes to international bankers.
Do all this information on
Yes, yeah, could you, yeah.
It's Julian Collar. We can remove this. You say you can take it away from you. Yeah, well, you're funding them by by allowing them to use your name in capitals. Yeah. The moment you say to everybody, right, I'm now being recognised with my name in lowercase because that's me. You're not having access to my trust account. You're taking away their funding. As soon as more and more people wake up to it, they panic.
So has anyone done this and they've got their own funding?
I've lived off my trust account for 7 years. I do this 24/7. I do this, and I'm doing it at the moment.
How did you access the money?
Pardon?
How did you access it?
I tell the authorities they're giving me the money because it's my money, not theirs. Yeah, they have to, because it's the law. When you're reporting it's unlawful, what they're doing is called legal fraud. So if they're using your name in capitals, that's deceiving you to access, that's extortion. So the moment you tell the authorities, the council, the police and stuff like that, they panic. So I get people who are having their houses taken off of them, tell them not only have they got enough money to pay for the mortgage that they say they're not paying, but that they've paid, and they're doing what's called the mortgage fraud. They then spin it all around. The council can't back them up, the police can't back them up because they're still using the same thing. And this goes right the way through to the Royal Courts of Justice, even to the point of where the Royal Courts of Justice did the sign, which is the pound coin developing the 12-sided edge, on the 15th of October, shortly after they did this event. And that was to show that the legal override of law had backed up what happened at Milton Keynes.
If you've never heard of the terms legal fiction or straw man, then what you're about to learn is something that sounds so astonishing that it couldn't possibly be true. If I were to tell you that paying your tax, getting a driver's license, registering your car, paying fines, and attending court are all optional and that you are conned into agreeing with them, what would you think? All statues and acts are optional too. Your straw man is a fictitious legal entity created at your birth through your birth certificate and the registration of that birth.
When each person is born, whenever a human being is born, there's two entities. One is the real entity, which is the human being, the flesh and blood, and the other is a legal fiction, a fictional entity that is nothing more than a piece of paper, the birth certificate. Again, we're duped into believing that these are one in the same, and so we're tricked into representing the legal fiction, the straw man, that birth certificate. So when people get fines and things like that, it's actually consulting the legal fiction, the non-existent entity, the corporate entity that is owned by corporations.
You have any interactions with the bureaucracy, okay? They're not interacting with you, they're actually interacting with your legal fiction, because they can't deal with a flesh and blood human. Yeah, they have to deal with another corporation.
When you start to break down the words that we use and you start to look at the roots of all these words, and you actually look at where these words, what these words actually really mean, you start to get an idea of what's going on. The word corporation is very, very specific because it's corp and oration, it's dead speak. So a corporation is something that's dead. It's an entity that exists only in a legal framework. It doesn't exist in any other framework at all. It only becomes an entity through legal mechanisms and legal means.
In essence, when you were born and far too young to understand, a company with your name was created through your birth certificate. When your parents registered your birth, they actually created a company and handed ownership of that company and you over to the state. It is important to remember that your parents were tricked and had no idea this was happening. This is why the state can take children from their families and it not be classed as kidnapping. They own your child.
They own 1/10. Because they registered the child, they have 9/10. Possession is 9/10 of the law. But there's 1/10 floating about somewhere. And the government have claimed that 1/10. So when the child, because I've had it from social workers, at least now, 3 social workers on separate occasions have come out of audiences and actually said to me, you're right in what you're saying is because we have to get the birth certificate within 48 hours of taking the child. And if they can't get the birth certificate, they have to reapply to be able to get the birth certificate. They have to get it because that is proof of who the slave is, what the slave is. And actually, in legal terms, they're actually only entitled to the birth certificate and not the child. To take the child on the pretense that they are this legal personality is theft. So in legal terms, it's kidnapping. But for social services, can use legal kidnapping because everything is okay as long as it has the stamp legal applied to it. That includes war, genocide, anything is okay as long as it's, yep, it's okay, it's legal.
The same thing also happens when you register your car. You get a document back saying you are the registered keeper and not the registered owner.
So yeah, obviously